deluge conditions. Just look at that rain. But it hasn't deterred the crowd. Huge crowds turned out here at Shannonville Motorsports Park as we watch the riders walk out onto the racetrack. Alan Scott there with the Wayne Rainey Racing 250 Yamaha. The Wira Pro Formula 2 race brought to you by Dianetics, the owner's manual for the human mind.
The Airtech Formula 2 race is on the grid right now. Morris, let's set the grid.
Yeah, John Cornwell on pole, Darrell Cooney, Chris DeLuzio and Alan Scott across the front row. 2 Canadians, 2 Americans. They have a green light. This race is underway in terrible, terrible conditions.
Take a look at that rain out there. We don't know what's happening on the back part of the track. It's actually been getting wetter on the back, drier in the front as the day has proceeded. These riders have no idea what conditions they're going to run into from turn to turn.
I'm amazed. In these terrible conditions, they're all through turn 1 safely, down into the turn 2 area, bunching up at the back of the field. Darrell Cooney making a little bit of a break. He's the local track specialist, followed by Alan Scott, already up into second place. These riders are really going at it right from the green light.
Morris, we have to say right now, you are the team manager of the LA Motor Works effort up here, and congratulations at this early stage of this Formula 2 event. Darrell Cooney looks like a master out there, definitely looking like the local hero he is.
Darrell's a young rider. Darrell has a bright future in the sport. He's never won a national event before, but he's been threatening to quite a while. Darrell's doing a good job here today.
He certainly is. Alan Scott is not letting too much daylight get between him and Darrell Cooney right now. Alan Scott with all that 125 GP racing over in Europe. He's got plenty of experience. He's ridden in the rain before. He's still going to be a tough competitor to beat here today.
A lot of riders back in that battle for third place. We have to mention, Keith, the tires these riders use in these conditions are vastly different from the slick racing tires they normally use. Very, very deep threads cut into these tires, front and rear, and that provide as much grip as is available.
Look at the difference between Darrell Cooney's lines and Alan Scott's lines. You can see Darrell Cooney actually squaring these turns off, looking very much like a dirt tracker. Alan Scott going in low, taking the very conservative line.
And at the end of the straightaway, the conservative line takes the lead. Alan Scott has gone through halfway around the first lap. Alan Scott takes the lead from local rider Darrell Cooney. Alan Scott from California riding the Wayne Rainey team, Yamaha 250.
Scott and Cooney out in front and walking away from the field in these wet conditions. You're right about the tires. They are full rain tires, but in this type of condition, with these kind of puddles, we can see the puddles on the track, those tires. Well, there's Alan Scott showing us right now that you can hydroplane one of those 250s just as well as you can on a dry pavement.
And in lap 1, Alan Scott leads just barely from Darrell Cooney, who's also hydroplaning. These guys, they move around so easily on the wet. They also try and soften up the power band for the rain. They'll maybe change their gearing a little bit. They don't want the bike to be just as vicious as it is in the dry.
You can see Alan Scott riding, trying to get his knee down on the pavement. I spoke with him just before this race. He said it was a big advantage. Getting that knee down was the outrigger, and it really works like an outrigger in these conditions.
Another thing you can notice, take a look at Darrell Cooney's face. He appears to have half of his face covered up with white tape. That's to stop condensation. In these wet conditions, riders have a terrible problem with their visors fogging up. Once the visor fogs up, they're out of the race.
He looks like a mummy out there that's just popped out of an Egyptian box, Morris, but that is exactly correct.
Take a look back to the battle for third place. Brad Sawyer being followed by Donnie Green. And I got to say, I'm not the only team owner up here in the booth. Keith Code, you own and run this bike ridden by Donnie Green.
That's right. It's the Dynetics sponsored machine, and I'm glad to be out there competing with you, Morris, except that it looks right now like your rider, although he didn't quite make that pass on Alan Scott, is doing a really fine job in the wet.
Well, Keith, as Alan and Darrell work their way back around, we're only on lap 2. This is a 15-lap race. There's a long way to go in these terrible, terrible conditions. I can't say how awful. You can see the rain teeming down here. Out onto the back straightaway off that first gear hairpin. These two Yamahas line up slipstream. Look how narrow, how tight they can get in behind each other. They make, as we spoke in earlier shows, they make as small a hole in the air as possible. Alan Scott leads. Cooney drops back. Oh, Alan Scott bobbles. The front wheel goes smothering. He's okay. He's riding off the course. He maybe get back up. No, Alan Scott is
down
gone.
The road. Oh no, Alan's right off in the dirt. Looks like he hit a pothole there, or maybe even trying to turn the bike back onto the track. That thing is loaded with mud. It must weigh another 50 pounds.
Just look now how much of a lead Cooney has. These two riders were pulling away at such a rate from the rest of the field. At the end of lap 2, Cooney has a 10 or 15 second lead right now.
There's nobody even in sight. Here he is coming onto the last turn onto the front straightaway, and there is second and third place. Brad Sawyers followed by Donnie Green.
And Dave Slowboom bringing up 4th place. Cooney's gone. Cooney's out in front. In second place, Brad Sawyer, followed by Donnie Green, Dave Slowboom, Rick Tripodi, and at the back of that group, John Cornwell. John Cornwell, another Canadian who won the heat race here yesterday. John has been the fastest 250 rider here all weekend. He seems to be having trouble in these wet conditions as we watch Darrell Cooney. He's not having any trouble. He's really having a good day, this young rider.
A beautiful ride. You can see the rain just teeming down. There it is. It looks like steam coming off the back of that bike. It's a rooster tail of water being thrown up by those totally deep-treaded tires that the riders are using out there. Actually, Darrell Cooney looks like right now that there is no problems for him. Nothing in front of him, really nothing behind him. He's got a clear track. He's handling it as beautifully as possible.
I'm counting back, Keith, and he's already on the 3rd lap. He's already got about 18 seconds on the rest of the field. Look at this battle for second place now. Brad Sawyer still holding on to second place. He's under a lot of pressure from Donnie Green and Dave Slowboom, another Canadian.
Look at Rick Tripodi trying to run it in the low line under everybody. He does run it in underneath Donnie Green.
Donnie's gone down. Donnie's been caught out by the wet conditions. He slides off the racetrack. Oh dear, Donnie Green, he traveled a long way from Northern California to this race.
It's a real neat layout, and it's got some interesting corners that you can kind of connect together and make one long sweeping turn out of them, so you can make some fast sections here out of slow sections.
The race for second place, the deck is being shuffled again. Rick Tripodi, Brad Sawyers, Dave Slowboom, and John Cornwell bringing up the tail end of that dice for second place.
As they start out along the long back straight, Brad Sawyer appears to have a problem. Brad Sawyer is slowing down the straightaway. Slowboom is pulling away from John Cornwell, has gone past now. Yeah, Brad Sawyer out of Fort Worth, Texas definitely has a problem as the other riders break and downshift into the turn here at the end of the straightaway. Just look, that's Kenny Roberts Jr. coming up through the field. I know Alan Scott remounted. He's somewhere back there in the field. I thought it was Alan coming through. Here's our leader, Darrell Cooney. People along the pit road telling him he's just got a huge lead.
The cut takes us back to second place. Rick Tripodi, the Ontario Canadian, doing a very fine job in the rain today.
Take a look back through the field. It appears that Kenny Roberts Jr. is the first American in this race. Kenny Roberts Jr. has never ridden in the rain before. He's moving around on those wet tires, just having a lot of fun, it looks like. We have a rider down in turn 1.
Number 43, Stephen Sue Lum. It looks like he had target fixation on the other rider who was off in turn 1, Walter Dimitrovsky, both Ontario Canadians.
Darrell Cooney here still pulling away from the field. Darrell's normal mount this year is a 1988 Yamaha 250, campaigned by Rich Oliver back in 1988. Darrell he's entirely a privateer, although he has some good sponsors. One of his sponsors has come forward with this deal, Tri-City Cycle. Clive Moxey from Tri-City Cycle providing the money to buy tires for Darrell this weekend.
Look at him out there in the rain. You must be very proud of him, Morris. Well done for hiring this rider. I mean, there's nothing in between him and the checkered flag right now except his own riding. You can see right now the weather conditions have completely changed here at the Shannonville track. It's actually not drying up, but it's not raining as hard in this part of the track. When we get back over to the front straightaway, we're probably going to see some more rain right over here in our area.
Taking a long look back to second place, we see Rick Tripodi, the Ontario, Canada rider on the Brewtoon sponsored Yamaha, still holding second place from Dave Slowboom, the Vancouver, Canada. He's come a long way, Vancouver, British Columbia.
And Mike Nelson has moved up, another Canadian, moving up on the second place dice. He is going to go in there. He wants to be part of that deck reshuffling that's going on right now. And Slowboom looks over his shoulder. He sees Nelson's there. Nelson trying to run the inside line down the back straightaway. He gets by Slowboom. He's going to run it in underneath Rick Tripodi. At least he's going to try to.
No, Tripodi holds him off. Tripodi closed the door. Darrell Cooney there going away. You know, when we first arrived at this racetrack, Darrell had a little bit of trouble adjusting to a team situation where everything was done for him. He was sneaking around with spanners in his pocket. I caught him. Chris DeLuzio, one of our top American riders, has gone down at the end of the bike.
Not a whole lot like the States tracks, but once you get the hang of it, there's a real rhythm to the track, and if you can find that groove, you can go really good around here.
And almost simultaneously on the track, Alan Scott working his way back up into that second place battle, takes a second tumble down the track. Alan Scott is just a little disgusted right this moment.
As we watch the replay, Alan went down. Just too much water on the track for him. His tuner, Sandy Rainey, has built a little air dam. You can see it on the bottom of the fairing to keep the water off of the back tire.
It's going as well as can be for a new track. We're getting there slowly but surely, and hopefully things will work out good for us. We found that, of course, everywhere you go, there's a couple of local guys that are going real well.
And back to the battle for second place. Rick Tripodi, the local Canadian, is not giving up. And there's Brad Sawyers, just about our first American up there. He's running off into the grass.
Brad Sawyer did well to save that as we watch Darrell Cooney continue to lead this race.
The action continues in this AirTech Formula 2 event with Darrell Cooney finding his way around the puddles out there in the infield at this fabulous Shannonville racetrack. And he really is threading his way through those puddles. He has found the dry line where there is no dry line. You can see him right there, skirting around the side of those puddles. That is fabulous. He really understands this racetrack, Morris.
And back behind Cooney, we have a new second place rider. The battle for second place is hotting up. Richard Nelson out of Nepean, Ontario, on the 600cc Yamaha street bike is in second.
And John Cornwell followed closely by Kenny Roberts Jr. on the Wayne Rainey Otsuka-sponsored TZ250B Yamaha.
Take a look now further around the racetrack. Our second place rider, Richard Nelson, coming across a lapped rider, Andrew Trevitt at number 17 Yamaha. This is a problem. When conditions are like this can be a real treacherous time for riders.
Interesting thing about Richard Nelson's bike is that it's a four-cylinder Yamaha 600cc machine. It's the first one up there. This is actually considered good conditions for a four-stroke machine against the 250 two-strokes. They're a little bit more tractable in the rain, but he's definitely not catching our leader, Darrell Cooney.
We have a faller. It's John Cornwell. John Cornwell, one of our heat race winners, our pole sitter, has fallen. He's at the end of the long straightaway. They're picking up his 1991 TZ250 Yamaha, and he's going to continue. John Cornwell, that's amazing. That's one of the things about wet weather.
It's amazing that nobody else has crashed here, or not many more people have crashed in that area. You can see rocks and rain strewn all over the end of that back straightaway, right where the riders are on the brakes.
As we see Richard Nelson on his 600cc Yamaha, this difference in machinery illustrates the point that the AirTech Formula 2 class is just like mini Formula USA. Anything goes.
Rick Tripodi following behind that four-stroke machine, which looks like it's very tractable. And right behind him, Mike Lavallée, another Quebecian who's doing a fine job on his Yamaha 250.
John Cornwell is now coming up behind these riders. He's got to fight his way through them again. John Cornwell, immediately after this race meeting, is packing up and heading to Europe. He's going to compete in some of the European Grand Prix. Unfortunately, he's not having such a good day today.
Richard Nelson moving off, inheriting second place. Rick Tripodi now working hard to hang on to third place, right in front of Mike Lavallée.
Michael Lavallée is diving down the inside. Lavallée has taken third place from Rick Tripodi. Rick Tripodi on the Brutune sponsored 250 Yamaha, a team actually that Darrell Cooney rode some time for last year. Showbloom is, and Richard Nelson is having a hard time keeping that motorcycle upright. Shakes his head. He's having a great time.
He's out there and he's got the gas on. He's moving away. He's got second place pretty well sewn up right now.
You're right, Keith. He's opened up a little bit of a gap on the other riders who are battling for second place. He's coming across a back marker now. But in these conditions, it's difficult to hold a lead. I mean, these guys slow down. One little trip off the racetrack, he might still be in the race, but they can catch him right up again. He's tiptoeing around the racetrack, trying to avoid the puddle. It stopped raining now, and that later on, if the race goes on much longer, we're winding the laps down, could cause a problem, because as the track dries, these rain tires heat up, and that's a problem. The riders will then switch their strategy and they'll go looking for puddles. As the riders behind him, 79 Mike Lavallée comes past that back marker. Dave Slowbloom out of Vancouver, British Columbia in fourth place now. He's safely past the back marker as they head back up towards the packed grandstand. Treacherous weather today here, but just look how many people come out and watch these races here in Canada. This is really a good show the Canadian organizers have put on.
Richard Nelson holding on to second place. Here we have Soblum and Lavallée. Lavallée in front of Soblum. Soblum making a charge on Lavallée, coming down the very short front straightaway here at Shannonville, trying the inside line on him, weaving through the puddles. He's got him going into the turn one section, and we're closing this race down. We've only got a lap or so to go, and Soblum is after Nelson.
Take a look back further. John Cornwell, who remounted, is back in the race, and he's in very close company with Kenny Roberts Jr. Kenny Roberts Jr., as we said, riding for the first time in the rain. He's having a lot of fun, but he's following the master. He's following the pole sitter here in this race.
John Cornwell was looking for a win here in this AirTech Formula 2 race, brought to you by Dianetics.
Kenny Roberts followed. Kenny Roberts has gone through. Kenny Roberts has taken the place away from John Cornwell, our pole sitter. Kenny Roberts now has to lead this guy. John Cornwell, I'm not sure if he's going to learn anything following Kenny Roberts. They're always learning, of course. But Kenny Roberts Jr. doing a really good job today. He's the top American in this race. Never ridden in the rain. That's an amazing feat. He's out here mixing it up with track specialists, guys who've spent a lot of time riding in the rain.
And I don't think John Cornwell is going to let him get away with this thing. The new guy on the block is just a little too new for Cornwell. I know Cornwell for a long time. They call him Corn Dog.
As we speak, Keith, as we speak, Corn Dog's gone through. Corn Dog, as he's called up here, as we watch our leader, Darrell Cooney, come by to start his last lap. Darrell will get the blue and white last lap flag. His team, we're really delighted with him. You know, he's doing a great job. His new tuner, Bruce Moss, arrived last night and boosted his confidence level. We have a rider down in a big way just in front of Cooney. Can't quite make out who it is, but there's a gas tank laying at the side of the racetrack. Looking back, our second place, the battle for second place is hotting up. Dave Slowbloom out of Vancouver, British Columbia, has caught Richard Nelson. Dave Slowbloom has one lap to take that second place back from Richard Nelson.
Look at all the dirt on the track up there. I don't see how this guy's going to make it. That's right about their turn point. There he got by him. Slowbloom got by him. Richard Nelson on that four-stroke. The two-stroke, now that the track is actually drying up, it's stopped raining here. There's still a wet condition, but the 250 is there. There he got a little sideways, but he is still in front, and there are only about 7 turns separating him from that second-place honor.
Dave Slowbloom has timed his charge to perfection, picking the last lap to go out and move. He's too far behind Darrell Cooney. He's not going to take the win, but second place will be a nice prize for him. Here he comes down through the twisty turn 5 and 6 section. Shannonville is a whole bunch of corners and one long straightaway. The Canadian riders love it. It's a really nice racetrack.
Dave Slowbloom hanging on to a very nice second place. It looks like he's going to be able to cruise right in there. Oh, well, he almost didn't make it to the checkered flag, Morris.
Riding like that, he won't be cruising anywhere. He's really getting wild. He's held on to it. There he goes again, bobbling around the outside of that slower rider. Dave Slowbloom through these twists and turns. He's having fun, but, you know, somebody should tell him he's got to make it to the checkered flag to take this second place.
In one lap, he's picked up about 4 seconds on Richard Nelson, and Richard Nelson has only got about 4 turns left to make up that distance, and I don't think that 600cc four-stroke is going to make it up on the straightaway because those TZ250B models are fast.
Just look at all the dirt on the road down here at the end of the straightaway. That's from motorcycles falling down, going into the dirt. Richard Nelson seems to have settled for third place. Here we watch our leader, Darrell Cooney, through the last turn. Darrell Cooney's put on a terrific show on this new Yamaha. Darrell Cooney weaves up the straight, throws his arm and his leg off the motorcycle. This is his first national win, and what a day to do it. When all the Wera guys are here on TV, Darrell has just done a terrific job. Dave Slowbloom comes through to take his second place, looks over his shoulder. No sign of Richard Nelson yet. There's Richard Nelson out onto the straightaway, taking a fine third place. Take a look at the rostrum. Darrell Cooney up front in this AirTech